talking to Nicole Cannon today about her new film Transference, which is currently on Amazon. You can view it there. She's the screenwriter of the film. You're also an executive producer?
Yes.
As well? Okay. That's what I thought I saw. How are you doing today in this age of COVID and everything?
I'm doing well.
That's good. You have a much better background than I have. I've been trying to figure out backgrounds, but nothing's really working. So today I'm stuck in my bedroom for.
I was in another room, but the lighting was so off. Like this side of my face was in shadow, and I was like, "This is better lighting."
Yeah, I've talked to people where sometimes like the light changes in the room, and it's like all of a sudden you can't see them. So depends. One second. Okay.
Did you know that it was National Podcast Day?
I found that out through an email. Yeah. The weirdest thing about podcasts is I don't listen to any. It's the strangest thing. Or at least I haven't found one that I choose. There have been some I've listened to, but honestly, this new age we live in just seemed like I used to interview people for websites and mostly websites. And I hadn't been doing it for a while, and I was like, in the new age of Zoom meetings, it makes it a lot easier to actually get in touch with people. You don't have to do phone interviews. It's a little more casual. So it's like meeting someone, but not at the same time, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Have you done a lot of these?
No, I actually only have done one other one. So
okay.
This is my second time. So what was I going to say? You were saying this was. I was going to say you don't listen to podcasts. I feel like we're so inundated with media right now, you know, especially because most meetings are taking place online. It's really hard to kind of have your spare time be plugged in like that, I think. I'm having a little bit of time watching all of the shows that are popular right now because I just feel like I'm constantly plugged in.
Yeah, I find that I have a hard time. I've had a harder time as the years progress listening to people talk, which is not exactly a good selling point for me, I suppose, but I have a hard time. I mean, everybody else I'm sure is fine. But I like, normally I listen to talk radio and stuff like that. And I just need music and some TV and I'm good. But well, let's talk about your film. You obviously used to be an actress.
Yes.
Maybe you still are, and you just
yes, I still am. I'll always be an actress.
Yeah. But how did you decide to make the leap to screenwriting, or when did you decide to do that, and how long has it been since you started to get to this point where you have a film produced?
So I was like pounding the pavement in 2007 and 2008, just going to auditions and booking some work and a lot of episodic television and feeling a little bit frustrated by the roles that I was going out for. And I was taking a class at the time where my mentor, Diana Castle, was saying, you're a storyteller, and kind of seeing it through that lens. And instead of getting frustrated by the stories that I wasn't getting to tell, I decided that I should, take the initiative and take a writing class. So I signed up for UCL Extension, and I actually had this really crazy dream. And I was like, this is a story. This is a movie. And so when I went to that class, I basically plugged all of the elements into the format of the class, and I had my first screenplay, and I felt really good about it. I feel like with acting, it just felt very nebulous to me. I never felt like I was in ownership of my own creativity. You would do like a guest star in a series, and then it would be edited down into like maybe 30 seconds of screen time. And then you would put about 10 seconds of that onto your reel. And then you give that to people and say, this is what I can do. But it wasn't what I could do. It wasn't what I wanted to say. So after I had my first screenplay, which was very large budget, it was like a throwback 20s script. The elevator pitch is what if the reason why Paris Hilton is so crazy is because she's haunted by a ghost of her former self? Or, I mean, that was back then in 2007 when Paris Hilton was making headlines. I think now we would probably say somebody else, like maybe, I don't know, who's like bad girl.
Kim Kardashian would probably Cardi B.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then I took another screenwriting class. I wrote my second screenplay. That one's the one that I want to shop around right now. It's a Burning Man comedy about my mom. 3 generations of women go to Burning Man. And it's kind of like it's got a lot of like hangover kind of raunchy humor. The backdrop is Burning Man, so I think that maybe we could do maybe a VR on that somehow. I think that'd be really fun.
That sounds
Again,
cool.
big budget. And then my goal in writing Transference was I wanted to write something that I could shoot on a budget, because I had written these 2 screenplays, was having a really hard time getting people to read them, much less make them into a film. So I was like, let me write something that I could produce myself. So I kept the location small, I kept the budget small, and and it was an amazing experience. Like, I loved being on that side of the camera because I felt like I got to really explore the world of the characters while I was writing it, and then see them come to life and kind of help, guide those performances in the areas where they needed a little bit of like, let's try it this way, or let's do it that way kind of thing. That was kind of neat. I was definitely, along with my director, very hands-on in the production of the film. So.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So what about and where did the story kind of come to you, and how did you work from the initial idea to the script that you shopped around for financial backing?
So I saw a public service announcement in 2005, and it was a young girl pushing a dead girl in a swing. And then the girl was pulling a dead girl around in the wagon, and she was on a seesaw with the dead girl. And the tagline said, "Survivors of sexual abuse have to carry a dead part of themselves around with them for the rest of their lives." And as a sexual abuse survivor, I related to that. And I wanted to, just take that idea and make it bigger. I was also at the time in a class at University of Santa Monica, their spiritual psychology program, which had a lot to do with healing and integration traumas from people's past to help them live more fully and whole in the present. And so for the second year, we had a Sacred Yes project. So mine was to write and produce a film. And that was the film that I made, and it fit along in with their curriculum. There's a scene in the end of the movie, I think, where I don't know if you've seen it yet, but
I saw it last night. Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of changes genres at the end of the movie. That was a lot of the tools that we used at USM to help with healing and integration. And so I put that directly in the movie by using, the ghost characters being, part of the shadow side and the shadow work that needed to be done. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just be honest that I was initially, I when I walked into the theater, when I walked into the movie, so to speak, I was thinking it was like an independent drama about sexual abuse. I didn't really know what to expect. And then this horror element, which I'm touchy on horror. So I was only like, what? Okay, well, this is odd. But it never really developed into that, which I ended up, I will admit, I was a little on unsure footing for a good portion of it.
Unsure footing in a way that you're like, yeah, I'm not about it, because you didn't really know what it was, or?
Well, I felt like I couldn't get a grasp of where it was going, perhaps, and that's on me. I think more than anything, I think I try not to do that with any film. I usually try to let things develop, but I maybe I was antsy or something. You never know what you bring to a film, but I want to get through my because there is a positive at the end of this. This isn't necessarily negative, because I did like the film. It's just that it took me a while, and I've had this happen with a few films this year where they won me over somehow in the final 20-30 minutes by going in a different direction than I had anticipated. So I will say that it and I think my issues were wholly my issues. I think somebody else would probably have a completely different.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like even in our reviews, people either love it or hate it. I think people who are committed to the genre are like, this is so cheesy. What's this about? Because I've been kind of saying to people who don't respond to horror and won't watch it because the trailer is very much a horror trailer, and they're like, yeah, I don't do horror. I'm like, well, it's kind of a Lifetime movie wrapped up in a horror film, or disguised as a horror film. Like, it actually, it does kind of at the end, like, bring it all together and pay off, I think. And I think that most audiences that have seen it feel the same way, which was my intention. And the reason why I went with the horror element is because, these things that happen, they're horrible, and we live with them, and they haunt us for our whole lives until we deal with it and we integrate it. And then it goes from being this dark, horrible monster of a thing that happened into this beautiful part of ourselves that, got lost, in the past. And so there's an opportunity there for, I think, not only survivors of sexual abuse, but anybody who's had any kind of like trauma from childhood. It could be physical trauma from physical abuse, or emotional trauma from psychological abuse, or even like, we have all of these little things that happen in our lives, even if like, I grew up in a generation where it was perfectly normal to like break a wooden spoon on my ass if I did something wrong. That was completely normalized. That is traumatic for a child to be spanked. There's part of you that feels shame for the thing that was done wrong. And in that shame, you sort of disintegrate from that side of yourself, the bad girl side of yourself. Well, if that part of you goes unchecked, that bad girl side of you starts running the show. That bad girl side of you, depending on how much it's shoved in darkness, wants to go out and party, wants to go out and do drugs, wants to be promiscuous, wants to like, decimate their whole lives in order to kind of be acknowledged that, this thing that I did in the past that I was punished for, this thing that happened to me in the past that, may have been my fault just by being who I am, isn't actually, it doesn't have to stay in shadow. It has to be, really acknowledged and seen and, I don't know, just revisited in a way that allows for us to, love. I guess it's self-love in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No, I will say that I got that. I will blame my own whatever my expectations or mood, and I try not to do that with films. I try to, but in the end, I was surprised by the last third of it. I'd say that, and it ended up winning me over. And I guess because, and what I guess I appreciate is because it didn't, honestly, why am I blanking on the word? It went beyond my expectations, basically.
Were you going to say transcended?
Transcended, yeah. I was wanting to say transferred. And
I know, as soon as you said it,
not the word.
Transference, transcended, transmuted. Yeah.
Cool. No, so transcended my expectations. So
yay.
I thought there was just something really interesting about, and I know, and trust me, as a writer myself, the word interesting sometimes is oh really, it's interesting. But to me, I thought it was interesting that it had the confrontation between the portion of herself that she left behind and her, current self. And I feel like I'm giving some of the movie away, but
I think it's already out there. People who kind of heard about the film, I'm sure
it's about getting there, I think, too.
Yeah.
I
mean, and so that last part that you're talking about, so that's a lot of the tools that we used at USM. It's Gestalt therapy, basically, where you actually connect with that disenfranchised part of yourself and you give it a voice, right? So it's like in the therapy session, you play both roles. Like, I am me, and I'm also the child who was abused. And so I'm like, what do you need to say to me? And that inner child might have some rage that it never got to express. That inner child might have a shit ton of shame that it never got to express because it wasn't safe to do it at that time. And what you're doing is you're giving it a voice and you're allowing that to come through you, but you're really kind of embodying all of the feelings that you were experiencing while during that traumatic period of your life. And there was this other process that I did that was kind of the beginning of my healing journey, where I went to India, and their philosophy was any feeling fully expressed turns to joy. So what happens in trauma is that it's too scary to express the rage. It's too scary to express all of the feelings that are around the abuse. And so in fully allowing yourself to voice those, you release the energy of those emotions. And when you release those energy of those emotions, you're not carrying them around you with anymore. Because what I found in my life is that this sexual abuse happened at a very, very young age. And because I became so identified with the objectification that came through my abusers, that I tended to filter reality like that. That's what my purpose was in the world as a woman. And so then I tended to, and I'm not saying it's my fault, but what I noticed is that I tended to attract many circumstances where this was happening to me, not just at 2 and 4, but throughout my life, I mean, I could kind of give you a long list, which we won't go into, of different times where there was sexual assault, and getting sick of that, being that victim and like wondering what was going on. I was like, there must be something that I'm doing that's attracting this. And I found that when I went into this process in India and allowed myself to feel all of the rage that I was feeling around it and feel all of the hurt that I felt around it, that I released the energy bubble of it. And then I was no longer filtering reality in that way. And I was no longer attracting those experiences that are validating that shame. So it's like the outer world is a reflection of your inner state. And so if I'm feeling like a bad, shameful person, then I'm only going to filter for that reality, therefore call in that energy towards me that's going to validate that state. And so as soon as I worked on healing that and releasing that, I was no longer living from that life perception, and my world got brighter. My world got more whole. I started attracting better relationships and seeing myself differently in those relationships. So it's a whole process. It was like a 10-year process for me. It wasn't like, you know, it's on 80 pages in this movie, but it's something that I worked very, very hard at for 10 years. So
yeah. And did you feel that somehow that writing this, completing the screenplay, was perhaps the end of the cycle of working towards bettering yourself or figuring yourself out?
I think there's definitely something about putting your story out there in a big way for people to see. Because I feel like my final piece of my healing process is when I finally was able to come into forgiveness. That for me was just the closing of that chapter. The writing about it and putting it out there in the world, it didn't carry a charge for me, which is why I don't think it really was a piece of my healing. I definitely think that there's power in talking about these things. You know, if my experience is in service of somebody else who this happened to, then it was not for nothing. You know, so I think in talking about that and letting other sexual abuse survivors know that they're not alone, and sharing my experience of healing, I think that is my duty in a lot of ways. And I'm sure there's probably more healing to come with that. I think it was more of like being able to stand in my truth and authenticity without having to apologize for it. Like there's definitely that piece of it that I got through making this film. I feel proud of myself. I feel proud of the work. And I think that is definitely a step in that direction too. So, yeah.
That's great. No, I mean, without getting into detail, I mean, I'm not saying I'm probably at if there's a 10-year plan for my stuff over the years, I think I'm on year 5 almost. So hopefully it's only 10. But I feel in like those 5 years, I've had to, kind of come to recognize and realize a lot of things about myself. And there's still some other things that I need to do. I know.
Well,
for my own.
And also I think that life is very gentle and gives you what you need when you need it to be able to unpack this stuff. It's like the universe, life, God, your guides, whatever you want to call it.
No, I know what you mean.
Throw you a bunch of like what they call at USM spiritual curriculum at once. There's like, okay, he's ready to unpack this other little piece, and then you see it and you see the patterning of it throughout your life, and then you're able to kind of really open it up and understand what it's there and what the conditioning is that created those circumstances. And heal and evolve and grow, I mean, this is what we do as humans, in my opinion. I mean, I feel like that's why we're here. This is like earth school, and we have to grow, we have to evolve. Life gets too hard if we don't,
Right. Well, that's definitely, I will definitely say that's true in my life. I wasn't growing for a long time, and something changed in my life that forced me to well, it's like being thrown into the deeper end of the pool. It's like, you gotta swim now. I don't want to bore my audience with my nonsense. Well, how long after you wrote, say, the draft you were comfortable with? I know there's millions of drafts even after you get financing. There's the drafts on, you change things on the film set probably too. But when you felt like you had the script you wanted to shop around, from that point, how long did it take to go from there to financing to filming?
So because it was for my class, I put a schedule, and I had my first, so I started in October. I had my first draft in December, got notes from my director and my producer. We already had the financing, so that was already done. We already knew what the budget was, and I was definitely writing to keep it within that budget, which, you know, we ended up adding money to afterwards, I think, as you do. So I wrote the first draft by, you know, from October to January, like first draft, got notes. I think, you know, there was a few variations there, and we went into pre-production in May and then shot in July and edited it by, like, I think had our first cut like November. My ex-husband did the score for it, which was like so generous and kind of him. I was like,
Yeah, I noticed that there was a Canon.
There's three Cannons. My daughter plays Piper, my ex-husband plays music, and then me. So yeah, it was definitely, you know, it takes a village kind of project. Everybody, there was a lot of amazing creative people that came on board and really supported the vision. I think they really responded to the story, and they really wanted to be, you know, help and stuff. And you know, the team that we had in Atlanta was amazing. You know, the crew that we had, they definitely pulled together. I think it was like a 20-day shoot. Like, it was tiny, you know.
No, I talked to somebody that did a movie with Bruce Willis that did it in 10 days. So
yeah, it's crazy.
You had significant, you had double the amount of time a Bruce Willis movie had.
So I think we had our final cut and our final mix by the end of January, or maybe beginning of February, and then
of this year.
I think it was final. So it was October of 2018 to February of 2020, the whole process.
That's not bad.
Yeah, no, I was surprised at how quickly we were able to get it together. And then COVID hit. Like, I was a little bit excited to kind of, you know, do the business side of things and go to the markets and see how it did, like, you know, the Cannes market and the AFM market. And then of course COVID hit and completely shut all of that down. So we got really lucky. We originally had a foreign agent and a local, more of a straight to VOD agent and domestically, and then stuff happened with the contract and it fell through, and then Indie Rights saw it and they were like, yeah, this is like fits in with our library, and so they picked it up, and we were going to do a theatrical release, but they were saying that there was such a lack of content that it was better to go straight to you know, VOD. So I mean,
considering some of the movies have gone straight to the home market this year, I mean,
yeah,
the big ones are Mulan. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, there's not a lot of films that have pushed through.
I mean, we knew that if we had a release, like a theatrical release, that nobody's going to show up anyway. So it wasn't the kind of thing where we had a distributor that was putting it out. We were going to put it out ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, it was probably better not to do that, because it would have been a bunch of money, you know, for nobody to show up. My daughter and her friends could have gone and watched her on the big screen, but ultimately, I don't think anybody was going to the movie theater.
No, there's not, and they're not really going right now. I mean, there's there's movies out there, but they're you know, they're, as far as here in the States, they're not doing very well. So
yeah,
it's an odd time. It's a very, very odd time. But you're on Amazon Prime. You know,
yeah. I mean, we did it. Like, that's the whole thing. It's like, how many movies get made and, you know, they never see the light of day because either they get stopped up and they lose financing for, you know, the post-production, or they never find a platform to release on. So for me, this is a win. I mean, it's my first project as a writer, so I feel pretty good about it. And like the feedback that I'm getting from like a lot of different people, I feel like the message of the movie is being received in the intention with which I wrote it. So that feels really great. And yeah, I'm happy about it. I hope more people see it. I hope it finds its audience. That's my wish, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, that's the great thing about home entertainment at this point. It's like, stuff's around now forever. It's, you know, I would imagine we're probably somewhat in a similar age range, because we talked about being spanked with a wooden spoon. So it's like, you know, that's you know, that's the older generation.
The classic 70s like stuff, you know?
Yeah. So it's like, but you know, I mean, I'm sure you can remember TV options were slim, you know, in growing up. So
there were 16 channels.
Well, yeah, I'm older than you then. I had like 7.
Okay.
So, you know, and then in the 80s we got cable, so that was cool.
And the box, and then there was like
the box with the little switches.
Yeah.
Eventually you got a remote control. But yeah, nowadays it's like for entertainment junkie like myself. I mean, I've got virtually everything. I mean, just I need it to I need all if I want to watch a movie, I need to be able to watch it in that moment. So I have everything.
Right.
And
It's
I
like
think
right at your
a lot of
fingertips.
people are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I'm thinking, like the other day I was thinking about Talk Radio, the Oliver Stone movie from the 80s. I'm like, all right, how can I watch it? It's like instantaneously I can pull that up, which is awesome.
Right.
It's kind of my dream was actually for one company to have everything, but
right. So you didn't have to go searching for it.
Right,
I don't know. I think
right.
we're all going to be AI soon, and we'll just have that chip in our brain that if we want to watch that movie,
that would be disappointing. That would be really just if we start surgically implanting stuff in our heads.
Exactly. You don't need Wikipedia anymore. You can just go, brain, what's this?
But that's probably not that crazy of an idea of it happening.
It's probably actually what we already are on some level.
Well, it's probably I don't doubt it's being worked on somewhere or thought about.
Right.
It's just that nobody's done it yet.
Did you see? I think Bezos is has this new feature that you can I think it's like the veins in your hand is like the reader for all of your information to pay for stuff. I didn't read the whole article. I just kind of read the headline or something.
No, I haven't seen that yet. I don't doubt it though. I'll have to look that up because I'm sure a friend of mine reads all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure if I asked him, he could tell me everything about it.
Yeah.
He always seems to be up to date on. I'm not saying he's paranoid. He's slightly paranoid, but we'll just say that.
I think it's hard not to be in these times. It's like, uncertain times, and you're looking for the thing that's going to make you feel secure again. So you're taking in any kind of information that might explain why things are so fucked up and crazy right now. That makes sense. That actually makes more sense than what that guy's saying. So
the stupid thing is I'm doing this now because I have to actually apologize because the person I'm thinking of is the guy that edits my show. So he's the guy that edits my show.
Oh, it's okay. We love you. We love you.
Yeah. No, I've known him since I was 6 or 7. So he knows I love him too. He knows all this stuff. He's gonna get. I don't know if he's gonna get a kick out of this or be irritated by it, but that's on me.
I honestly think that's par for the course. So I'm sure he's either used to it or expecting it, and is probably okay.
I tend to be pessimistic, but anyways, I'm gonna have to just send him a text after this, apologizing in advance.
Or we can just edit this part out.
Well, I can't edit. I gotta give it to him. I might still have him do it though. Anyways, well. Tell me you have the idea for the housewives or moms to
the Burning Man comedy.
Yeah, have you worked on anything else in the interim?
So no, I'm just polishing that script and getting ready for it to shop around. I have a couple other ideas, but no, I haven't really written. I feel like for some reason, COVID would have been a great time to be working on stuff. And I just was in survival mode. I was nesting and cooking and cleaning. And I didn't really, I was also focused on getting this film out. So I didn't really start any new projects. I was working on the comedy a little bit more, just fixing that and polishing that. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to write next. I'm the way that things have come through. I'm just waiting for that bolt of inspiration or something that I just really have to say to kind of be able to sit down at the computer and work on something, because I haven't had any kind of I have to say this, I have to say that. I'm taking a poetry class, so I'm staying busy with that, which I like, because it's a Zoom thing, so it's community. It's a lot of like-minded people and stuff. But I haven't been working on any new screenplays. Yeah.
What was the last acting job you had before all this happened?
So my director asked me to be in his movie, The Upstream Story, which is a film that takes place in India, surrounding following Satguru on the Rally for Rivers, but also talking about, it's more of a social commentary movie. And then before that, I don't think I had worked until my last job was on The Mentalist. That was my very last job. And that was in 2013, I think, or 2014.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and I don't think I've done anything other than the Upstream Story since then. I miss it. I like it. I miss it. I don't miss the business. Yeah, I don't miss the business at all.
But you're still in the business. It's just that you're not in the acting business.
I guess you could say I'm still in the business. Yes, you're right. I guess it felt a little bit different for me because I produced this myself. So I wasn't waiting for somebody else to give me permission to make my art. And I think that was the difference for this, you know. I haven't had the experience of trying to shop a script around. I'm sure I'm going to meet the same frustrations, but I feel like I'll interface it with it a little bit differently because I'm not a cog in somebody else's wheel. I'm actually trying to like pitch and sell something that I made in my creativity. So I feel like it's going to feel a little bit different. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. When do you feel you're going to be at the spot to move forward with the script you have been working on?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, it's ready. It's ready. I just need to have the contacts to take those meetings and pitch it. I don't have an agent right now, so I feel like I need representation to help me get it out there. Yeah, but it's ready. It's ready to go.
So that's the next step then, probably.
That's the next step. I've had a couple of people suggest that I, make it smaller and make it more like a Wes Anderson film. And then there's this really cool, funky location in Idlewild that would work if I kind of like scaled it back, because it's basically about my mother. So it's like, it doesn't have to take place at Burning Man, but she's crazy. And so that was the best place for it. So I could do it like just on a little bit of a smaller scale. And if this movie does well and it makes its money back, plus a little bit of a profit, then I would use that then to make this next film if it doesn't get picked up or financed by somebody else. So that, I think that's probably the long plan, or the short plan, or I don't know what plan. That's part of the plan. And then in the meantime, people have also been saying I should try directing. So I was thinking about writing a couple of shorts to just try my hand at directing and see how that goes.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. I had pretty good rapport with my post-production supervisor. He also did the second edit of the film, which, really kind of pulled the story together. And he had a really great team because we shot the opening sequence. He had a director who was amazing that shot the opening sequence and a couple other people that were DPs and stuff. So I feel like I could get a good team together here in LA and I could make that happen. I had a cute little story during COVID that I wanted to tell, but then Black Lives Matter happened and I felt like that story was less important than what was happening with Black Lives Matter. So it wasn't really what I wanted to say then at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as a writer myself, and I've toiled away on my own screenwriting as well. And the problem is I'm on one script and I'm trying to finish that, and I've got 4 other ideas I'd like to get to. So, I just need to. I keep coming up with ideas, and then I haven't gotten the one finished. I'm like, you got to finish one before you go on to another. So,
yeah,
I've set a goal for this year, the end of this year, to finish it. So. Even if it's, but it's not, writing's not easy. I mean, I've been a writer my whole life, and writing a small news story for a website or doing a full-on feature or whatever, you always want it to be right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot out of you.
Well, and I think that what I've learned in this process is like what's on the page. The film you write is not necessarily the film that you make or necessarily the film that gets edited. I think because I financed the film, I had complete creative control. So pretty much what is on the page is what you see on the screen, which is really great. I know that, when other people are involved, they come in and change it and they do what they want to do. And that's fine. Obviously, if they buy my script, it's theirs at that point. As far as the writing process goes, I think the one thing that holds me back from being productive is my lack of discipline. And it's that kind of writer's block that comes up and thinking that like, I'm not going to be able to kind of get past this one stuck point and stuff. And when I put myself on this schedule to make this film, my office hours were like from 9 to 1 every single day. And I was sitting at the computer, whether anything came or not. And I realized that once I just like worked through those writer's blocks and I was just like, okay, I'm just going to write the scene. I'm just going to start somewhere and I'm going to go. Like, even if I threw the whole, like, first 3 pages out, by the time I got to that page, I had the beginning of the scene. And at least then I could know where I was starting the next day. So it was kind of like having that discipline, whatever blocks I came up against, I worked through them by just like pounding away, just like constantly pounding away at the keyboard. So I learned a lot in that, because my process is very, I think, different to most writers because of that lack of discipline. I mean, my Burning Man script, I started it in 2010 and I finished it in 2016. It's not okay.
I know. I've been working on mine for 3 years, so.
Yeah, I mean, and so I just think that the office hours discipline piece, like, helps quiet the goons, and you're just like, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna like write regardless of the criticism that's coming in about how this is shit and nobody's gonna watch it.
Right. Yeah, I know that feeling. Oh boy, I had a question I completely forgot.
Well, what's the screenplay that you're
no, I'm sorry. I have it now. Somebody, I read somewhere, I had a bit of a run-in with a certain government administration person that I called a bad name and Twitter banned me. That's how politics are these days. You get heated and you just start saying things and you're like, oh, next thing you know is you can't use, which has been a beneficial thing for me because I don't have the aggravation of being on Twitter. But when I was on Twitter, there was a screenwriter who I would follow and they would suggest often, certain ideas. And one of them was that if you're stuck, just write down what you want the scene to be and move on to the next thing. And then come back. You could always come back, but keep moving.
Yeah, like have it as a placeholder.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting. Mine, just very roughly, is about a man who falls in love with a woman. It's a crime story, but it's more about the love story. He's kind of semi-autobiographical. He's recently separated. She's divorced. She's in a semi-relationship with somebody else and him, and it gets complicated. And then on that, the bigger part is there's this crime element, which is more like the, I guess, selling point. So I have the whole thing mapped out as far as where I want to go. I just need to finish the damn thing.
Yeah. Well, I wish you much luck, and that like your geniuses are like swarming or surrounding you and motivating you to sit down and finish that script, because it's
I need to finish it because, like I said, I have four other ideas I really want to get to. So, and I feel weird. I always feel weird when I start talking about myself, and because I hate taking the attention off. So I apologize to you and to any of the audience watching this. They didn't come here to hear about me. They came to hear about you. So, but no, I appreciate you asking. No, I have a hard time with talking about myself. It's interesting. That's a whole other.
I mean, I think that I'm much more comfortable behind the camera for that same reason. I tend to, my kids don't think I'm an introvert, but I think I'm an introvert. I was like remembering, like I would go to set and I would just bring a book and I would just like be in my trailer reading the whole time, and other actors would be out there on set like meeting people and being so social. I was like, God, why didn't I network? Like, why was
I always had, when I was, no matter what I was doing, I've always had a hard time networking. I do it very as quietly as possible. And, so I think the friends I've made in certain industries have been better because of it. I think there are some people that network so much, they act like, they're friends with everybody,
Yeah. I just think it's so much easier to have somebody else selling you and pitching you than you pitching yourself. There's like, I think that there's just this like cringy, like I don't want to come across as arrogant or narcissistic and like selling myself too much, but shit doesn't get done unless you actually like.
Well, there is a point where if you're in a business where you're selling what you're doing, you have to find a way to sell what you're doing.
Well, and I think that this is why it's important for me to tell the stories that I believe in, because I had no problem fighting for my story. because that was more important than me or how people were perceiving me. So whenever there was any kind of conflicts on set over how the story should be told, or if we didn't have enough time to get a certain shot, and like really fighting for the story, I had no problems, because I knew it wasn't my ego that I was fighting for. I was fighting for the story. And so I think that that's why it's really important for me to tell the stories that move me, or tell the stories that I think are coming from my voice and that I want to put out in the world, because I have less of a difficult time. Even though it is about me, obviously, it's more about like the product. It's not about like me. I don't know how to explain. I think I just explained it.
No, I think I get. I mean, I get what you're saying. You know, basically, yeah. I mean, probably the simplified version, that it's part of you.
Yeah.
It's not you entirely, but it's enough. It's a part. You've put a part of yourself into this, and you're giving it to other people now, and that's its own issue. Where
it's interesting, because like I'm unpacking this further. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. No, go ahead.
I'm just going to talk over you this whole time.
No, go ahead.
So there was talks in the beginning for me to play Camille in this movie, and I just knew that having that piece, it would have been a lot harder for me to try to go out and pitch and sell the movie, because it would have definitely felt like it was more about me being in that role. Whereas like there was something about writing it that made it one step removed, you know, because that story is not my story. It's my story of healing. So it's like, in playing Camille, it's kind of like I'm just really taking all of it on, and it's a lot, and it was a lot of hats to wear, so I didn't. But I feel like even now people ask me, are you writing for yourself? Are you writing to be in your movies? And I would love to do like a cameo in my movies, but I don't want to be the main character in my movies. I feel like that would be, you know, a disservice to the project, because I think that, like, I don't know, I just don't, I'm not, that's not my intention in doing it. So
it feels to me like you've put the acting side away, and the writing side is where you're at now.
I definitely feel more fulfilled by that. It's for sure. Like even in the process of writing, I come home from a day of writing and I feel really good, you know, in a way that I really never felt with acting. And that makes me sad, because I do love acting. I do love telling stories, and I do love, you know, exploring another person's humanity. I much prefer doing it on stage than I ever did for film and television. You know, it just wasn't my thing. I know a lot of actors, and I can see how different we are in personalities, and I understand why it was never my thing, you know. But it's cool, you know. And again, I'm not saying if anybody wanted to, like, you know, has a part, I would say no, but I'm just like, because then it becomes more play. When it's not my business, it definitely feels more like I'm just having fun, and I'm just hanging out with my friends on set and just, you know, having a good time.
Okay. Well, I think that's a perfect spot to end on, and I really appreciate you giving your time and giving yourself today. You're definitely in touch with, you know, who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, and I really appreciate that. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me on, and I wish you all the best with your writing, and can't wait to see what comes out of that for you, because that sounds like it's definitely something that like fires you up. So I wish you all the best with that as well.
All right, thank you very much, and I wish you all the best too. You have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.